My name is Emily Carter. I'm 35 years old, and if you're hearing this story for the first time, I want to ask, where are you watching from? Are you in Canada, the United States, or somewhere else? Because the story I'm about to tell you will stay in your heart for a long time, and you might even see yourself reflected in it. I grew up in a quiet suburb of Chicago, in a house that always looked perfect from the outside. Neat lawn, fresh flowers by the porch, a driveway that gleamed after it rained. But inside, things were different. My family's dinners were not just meals, they were battlegrounds. And that night, the battleground reached its peak. Let me tell you about the people in my life, so you know them like I do. There's my dad, Robert Carter. He's 62, a businessman who prides himself on control. He's smart, but also stubborn, the type who thinks life is black and white. My mom, Angela Carter, is the opposite, calm, charming, but sometimes eerily quiet. She has a smile that hides her thoughts, and she loves red wine. My little brother, Daniel, is 28. He's easygoing, but when things get tense, he freezes like a deer caught in headlights. And then there's me. I have always been the middle of everything, the one who listens, who tries to keep peace, who believes kindness is stronger than words. But maybe, in their eyes, that kindness became weakness. That evening started like any other Sunday dinner. Mom had made roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and her famous apple pie. The smell filled the house, warm and sweet. Daniel was scrolling on his phone. Dad was reading the sports section of the newspaper, and I was trying to talk about my new job at the hospital. But then Dad looked up. There was a strange shadow in his eyes. He put down his paper and said something that froze the air in the room. "You are just a burden," he said. The words were sharp, heavy, and they landed on me like stones. I blinked. Mom kept sipping her wine. Daniel's phone slipped from his hands. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "We want to live without you," Dad continued, his voice low but firm. "Get out. Right now." The sound of those words was deafening. My fork clattered to the plate. I felt something inside me snap. Mom didn't say anything. She just smiled faintly and looked at her wine glass, swirling it like nothing had happened. I stood up slowly, as if I was moving in slow motion. My legs felt like lead. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to show them I was hurt. So I said nothing. I just walked out of the house into the cold night. The door slammed behind me like a verdict. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses into your chest. I walked without direction. My tears were frozen by the night air. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't go back. That night changed me. I stayed in my car parked far from home, staring at nothing, replaying Dad's words over and over. The sound of Mom's silence haunted me more than the words themselves. A week later, I had the chance to confront them. But what happened that day was something neither of us expected. When I finally said what I needed to say, Dad calmly replied, "I know." Those words were not loud, but they struck me harder than anything he had ever shouted. There was something strange in his voice, a mix of relief and pain. That moment was just the beginning. What happened after changed everything. My life, my family, and even my own heart. I want you to stay with me, because this story will take you through betrayal, heartbreak, hope, and redemption. It will teach you something about kindness, even when the world treats you cruelly. And before we go further, I need to tell you, what happened that night was not the worst part. The real storm came afterward. The events that followed brought me to my knees and taught me that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, strength is the quiet decision to keep walking, even when the whole world says stop. In the next chapter, I'll tell you where I went that night, how I survived the week alone, and what shocking event happened that made me question everything about my family. But before that, imagine being in my place. Imagine your own family dinner turning into a scene like that. How would you react? The night I walked away was just the start. The storm was yet to come. That night, after Dad's words echoed in my mind, I didn't go back home. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the quiet streets of Chicago. The city lights blurred past like watery stars. I didn't know where I was heading. My only thought was to escape their words, Escape the silence of mom. Escape the feeling of being unwanted. I ended up in a small park by Lake Michigan. The water was still, reflecting the pale glow of the moon. I stepped out of my car, shivering, and walked to the edge of a lake. I could hear the soft lap of waves against the shore. It felt peaceful, and for the first time in hours, my chest relaxed a little. I sat on a bench, wrapped in my coat, staring at the water. I thought about my life, about all the times I'd tried to keep my family together, about all the sacrifices I'd made. I realized I'd been living for them for years, living by their rules, keeping peace, hiding my own pain so they wouldn't be upset. That night, I decided something. I decided I couldn't live like that anymore. If my family wanted me to be a burden, maybe they needed to feel what it was like to lose me. The week that followed was strange. I stayed with my friend Sarah, a nurse I had met at work. She lived in a small apartment downtown. Sarah didn't ask too many questions. She just gave me a couch to sleep on, coffee in the morning, and a kind smile when I needed it most. I kept my phone off. I didn't want to hear from Dad or Mom or Daniel. I needed time to think, time to heal, time to understand if I was doing the right thing. During those days, I found comfort in small things. I walked along the lake every morning. I bought a journal and wrote everything that happened, every word, every feeling, every tear. I even started volunteering at a shelter for women who were struggling. It gave me purpose, and for the first time in a long time, I felt useful again. But then, on the 7th day, something happened that shook me to the core. It was late in the evening. I had just returned from the shelter, tired but content. My phone, which I kept off, suddenly lit up. I hesitated, then answered. It was Dad. His voice was calm, almost too calm. No shouting. No anger. Just a quiet, measured tone. "Emily, can we talk?" I froze. My hand trembled. I didn't answer right away. He continued, "I know." The words were the same ones he had said a week ago when I confronted him. But this time there was something different. Something heavy in his voice. Something that made me wonder if he wasn't just saying them, but meaning them. I didn't respond. I just sat in silence, staring at my phone. Then I heard another sound. A soft knock on the door of Sarah's apartment. When I opened it, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. It was Daniel, my little brother. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying. He looked exhausted. "I need to talk to you," he said quietly. Before I could speak, he stepped inside without waiting. Sarah was watching us quietly from her kitchen, unsure what to do. Daniel closed the door behind him. He looked at me and said something that made my breath catch. "You can't run from this forever. They're in trouble, and it's your fault." Those words felt like a punch to my stomach. My mind spun. Trouble? My fault? What was he talking about? Daniel didn't answer. He just looked at me with that haunted expression, then left without another word. I stood there for a long moment, frozen. Questions filled my mind like a storm. What trouble was he talking about? Why did Dad call me? Why did Daniel come to see me now? That night, I lay awake in Sarah's couch, unable to sleep. I kept turning Daniel's words over and over in my head. Something was happening at home. Something bigger than Dad's words that night. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. A mix of fear and determination. I knew I couldn't avoid them forever. But I wasn't ready to go back yet. Not until I understood what was going on. That day, I decided to investigate. I wanted answers. And the first place I went was home. When I got there, the house was different. It felt colder, more silent. The air felt heavier. The front door was unlocked. Inside, there was a strange smell, something burnt. I stepped in slowly, calling softly. "Mom? Dad?" No answer. I walked further. My heart pounded. The living room was dark, but there was something on the floor. A letter. I picked it up. The handwriting was Dad's. And it said something that froze me completely. "Emily, we have no choice. We must do this. It's for everyone's safety." The words made no sense to me, but there was something terrifying in them. Something I didn't understand. Before I could read more, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. It was Mom. She was standing there holding her wine glass. Her smile was calm, but her eyes were unreadable. "Emily," she said softly, "we need to talk." That was the moment I realized this was no longer about a family argument. This was something much bigger, something dangerous. And I had no idea I was about to step into the storm. The morning after Mom's quiet words, I couldn't sleep. My mind was a storm of questions. Why was Dad acting like this? Why did Daniel say they were in trouble? And why did Mom smile like nothing had happened while holding her wine glass after everything? I decided not to go back to Sarah's apartment that morning. Instead, I stayed in my car outside my family's house, parked under a street lamp. I sat there for hours, watching the windows of the house. The blinds were drawn. The house seemed quiet, too quiet. After a while, I called Sarah. I didn't tell her much, just that I was staying close but needed time to think. She sounded worried, but she didn't ask too many questions. That was the kindness I loved about her. By afternoon, I decided to knock on my own front door. It was unlocked. My heart was pounding, but I stepped in anyway. The house felt colder inside than outside. Dust seemed to settle in the air. The silence was heavy, almost unnatural. I moved carefully into the living room. The letter Dad had left was still on the floor. I picked it up again. The handwriting was hurried, but I could read the words clearly. "Emily, we have no choice. We must do this. It's for everyone's safety." What could he mean by no choice? I felt a knot in my stomach. There was a faint smell of smoke in the air, like something had been burned recently. I followed the scent upstairs, where I found my father's study door slightly open. Inside the study, Dad's desk was covered in papers. Maps, photos, receipts. Everything seemed jumbled together. But one paper caught my eye. It was an envelope, marked with my name. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph, a picture of me, taken without my knowledge. But there was something strange about it. I was standing near my car outside Sarah's apartment. The date written on the back was from yesterday. How could Dad have known where I was? Before I could process this, the sound of a phone ringing startled me. I looked toward the hallway. The sound was coming from the kitchen. I walked toward it, heart pounding. Mom was sitting at the table, her glass of wine half full, staring at her phone. "Emily," she said without looking up, "you shouldn't have come back so soon." I wanted to ask her what was going on, but before I could speak, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text message. No number, no name. Just 3 words. "Get out now." My breath caught. I looked at Mom. Her smile didn't falter. She took a slow sip of her wine. "It's already too late," she said softly. "You don't understand yet." My stomach twisted. There was something in her voice, calm but cold, like a warning. Before I could ask her what she meant, a loud crash came from the basement. It sounded like something heavy falling. The floor vibrated beneath my feet. Mom didn't flinch. Dad didn't come out of his study. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet moved toward the basement anyway. I took the stairs slowly, every step creaking under my weight. The air grew colder as I descended. My breath came out in small clouds. When I reached the bottom, I froze. The basement door was open. Inside, shadows moved in the dim light. I couldn't see clearly, but I could hear voices, deep voices, speaking in whispers. I stepped closer. And then I saw something I'll never forget. There was Dad, standing in the middle of the basement, speaking quietly to someone I couldn't fully see. On the floor were more photographs, pictures of me, taken at different times, with notes written on them. My heart felt like it was going to burst. Before I could react, a hand landed on my shoulder. I spun around. It was Daniel. His eyes were wide. "Emily, you have no idea what's happening," he whispered. "They've been planning this for months." I took a step back, but Daniel grabbed my arm. His grip was firm. "Please, you need to leave now," he said. I turned toward the stairs. But before I could move, the lights went out. The basement was plunged into darkness. And then I heard it, a low, slow voice saying my name. It was Dad. "Emily, it's time." That was the moment I realized I was no longer safe. Whatever was happening, it was far bigger than just a family argument. Something was coming. Something I couldn't run from. The darkness in the basement was like a heavy curtain, pressing in on me from every side. My breath came in shallow gasps, and my heart felt like it might burst. Daniel's hand was still gripping my arm, pulling me gently toward the stairs. "I don't know what's going on," I whispered, "but I want out of here." Daniel shook his head. "You can't just leave."
Not yet.
"You need to hear this." The whispers from the basement grew louder. They sounded like Dad and another voice. Low, urgent, almost a chant. I wanted to step back, to run, but Daniel's grip was steady. We climbed the stairs slowly, the wood creaking beneath us. When we reached the top, Dad's voice was gone. The basement was silent again. Mom was still sitting at the kitchen table, her glass of wine untouched. She looked at me with that same calm smile. "Emily," she said softly, "you need to understand something before you do anything else." Daniel glanced at me, then at Mom. "You shouldn't be here. This isn't safe." I stepped toward the living room, feeling a wave of confusion and fear. "What is going on? What trouble are you talking about?" Mom sighed. "We've been protecting you, Emily, for years. But the time has come when we can't anymore." Her words made no sense. But before I could ask more, Daniel spoke up. "It's not safe to stay. There are people watching. People who will come for us if they know the truth." My stomach twisted. What truth? Before he could answer, Dad's voice came again, this time from the hallway.
Calm.
Controlled. "Emily, you need to go." That was enough for me. I didn't wait for answers. I grabbed my coat and rushed out of the house. The night air hit me like a wall. I ran to my car without looking back. I drove away without a destination. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, confusion, anger, fear. I ended up at a small diner on the outskirts of the city. It was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the clinking of cups. I sat in a booth and ordered coffee. Sarah called me again, asking where I was. I told her I was safe, but didn't explain much. She didn't push. That was her way, quiet support without questions. While I sat there, I kept thinking about Daniel's warning. What trouble had they been protecting me from? And why was Dad suddenly so calm? As I stared out the window, lost in thought, my phone buzzed again. A message. No sender. No name. Just a location. An address in the city. It was the address of an old warehouse I'd passed by once before. Daniel had never mentioned it. I had no idea why it was sent to me now. But something inside told me I had to go. I left the diner without paying. My coffee sat untouched. I drove to the location without hesitation. When I arrived, the warehouse was dark and silent. The air smelled of rust and oil. I stepped inside slowly. My footsteps echoed in the emptiness. Then I saw it, a faint light coming from the far end of the building. I moved closer, my heart pounding with fear and curiosity. And there, in the middle of the warehouse, I saw something that made me freeze completely.
It was a group of people.
Standing in a circle. They were chanting softly. In the middle of them was my father. But he wasn't speaking. He was kneeling, his head bowed. And on the floor in front of him was something covered in cloth. Something that looked alive. Before I could step closer, the light went out. The warehouse was swallowed in darkness. A voice whispered directly into my ear. "Emily, you shouldn't have come." When the voice whispered in my ear, I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't even move. The warehouse felt like it had swallowed me whole. The darkness pressed in from every side, making my skin crawl. I didn't know where the voice had come from. There was no one behind me. Daniel's words rang in my head. They've been planning this for months. I wasn't sure what this meant, but I knew I was right in the middle of something I didn't understand. I stepped back slowly, my mind racing. I wanted to run, but my feet felt stuck. I could still see the faint shape of my father kneeling in the center of the circle before the cloth-covered object. Then, without warning, a sharp noise echoed through the warehouse. Like metal striking stone. The group scattered instantly. Shadows moved quickly toward the exits, disappearing into the darkness. I was left standing alone in the cold silence, except for my own heavy breathing. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like it would burst through my chest. I wanted answers, but I also wanted to run. Instead of running, I moved toward the cloth-covered object. My hands shook as I reached out. Before I could touch it, a flashlight flickered on behind me. I spun around to see Daniel, looking pale and tense. "Emily," he whispered, "you shouldn't be here. They'll come for you." I looked back at the center of the warehouse. Daniel followed my gaze. His eyes widened. "Don't," he said sharply. "Don't touch it." Before I could respond, the lights in the warehouse blazed on. Harsh, white light filled the space. I blinked. The circle of people was gone. The object was gone. Even Dad was gone. The silence that followed was heavier than the darkness had been. Daniel grabbed my arm. "We have to leave," he said.
His voice was urgent now.
"They're going to come." I wanted to ask him what was happening, but before I could speak, the warehouse door slammed shut behind us. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I pulled at Daniel's arm. "Let's go," I hissed. We ran toward the door. My shoes squeaked against the concrete floor. But just as we reached it, the sound of heavy footsteps came from behind us. Slow, measured, powerful. Daniel pushed me forward. "Run." We burst out of the warehouse into the night. Cold air hit my face. The street was empty. No cars. No people. Just the sound of our own breathing. We didn't stop running until we were several blocks away. We collapsed against a brick wall, gasping for breath. Daniel leaned forward, hands on his knees. "They're watching us now," he said. His voice was low, almost trembling. "We need to move before they find us." My mind was spinning. Who are they? Why are they doing this? Why is Dad involved? Daniel shook his head. "I don't know. But I'm telling you, this is bigger than you or me. Or even our family." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city was quiet around us. My heart still pounded, and I felt fear mixing with something else, determination. I realized then that I wasn't going to run forever. If Daniel was right, this was something I had to face. But I didn't know what I was stepping into. That night, we parted ways. Daniel disappeared into the shadows without another word. I walked alone through the empty streets. My mind was full of questions, but one thing was certain. I could no longer ignore what was happening. The next day, I decided to go back to the diner where I had sat before. Sarah was there, waiting. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You look like hell," she said softly. "What happened?" I shook my head. I can't explain it yet, but I knew I had to tell her something soon, before whatever was coming found me. That evening, as I was leaving the diner, I received another message. This time, it wasn't just an address.
It was a time.
Midnight. Warehouse. Alone. My stomach sank. My hands trembled. I knew I had to go, but I wasn't sure if I was walking into the truth or a trap. When midnight came, I was already standing in front of the warehouse. The same one from before. Its dark shape loomed in the silence. I stepped inside. The air was colder now. My breath made clouds in front of me. I walked slowly, every step echoing in the empty space. And then I saw them again. The circle of people. My father kneeling in the center. But this time, they were chanting louder. The words were strange, almost like an ancient language. And then Dad looked up. His eyes locked onto mine. A slow smile spread across his face. And he whispered, just for me to hear, "It's time, Emily." The moment Dad said, "It's time, Emily," my heart skipped. Every muscle in my body froze. I stood in the warehouse, feeling the cold concrete beneath my shoes and the strange weight of the chanting filling the air. The circle of people remained still. Their voices seemed to wrap around me, pulling me toward the center of the warehouse. Daniel was nowhere in sight. I didn't know whether to run or to stay. My instincts screamed to run. But something deeper, something I couldn't explain, kept me rooted. My father's calm, yet unsettling tone tugged at me. I stepped forward slowly. My footfalls echoed. The chanting grew louder. The cloth covering the object in the center shifted slightly, as if stirred by some unseen force. I stopped, my breath uneven.
Dad remained kneeling.
His eyes never left mine. "You need to see this," he said quietly. "It's the only way to understand." For a moment I hesitated. Then I stepped closer, closer to him, closer to the circle. My heart pounded harder. Every instinct told me to stop, but I couldn't. When I was only a few feet away, the chanting stopped suddenly. Silence hit the warehouse like a hammer. The air felt thick, heavy, almost alive. Dad reached out and pulled the cloth away. What lay beneath was something I couldn't describe. My stomach twisted. My knees felt weak. It looked like a small wooden chest. Not just any chest. This one was covered in strange carvings, old and weathered. Symbols I didn't recognize. Dad's hand hovered over it. His voice was barely a whisper. "Everything changes now." Before I could speak, the air in the warehouse shifted. A strange hum filled the space. The chest began to glow faintly. A warm light seeped from its edges, casting moving shadows on the walls. I stepped back instinctively. My breath came in short bursts. My mind raced. What was inside? And why did Dad look at it like it was the most important thing in the world? Suddenly, the chanting started again, this time louder, deeper, and coming from all directions. The people in the circle began to sway slightly, their voices blending into something hypnotic. Dad's eyes flickered with something I couldn't name. Fear? Sadness? Determination? All at once? Then a voice rang out from somewhere in the darkness.
Deep.
Echoing. Not human. "Emily." The sound froze me. It wasn't Dad. It wasn't anyone in the warehouse. It was a voice that seemed to come from inside me. From the chest. From somewhere beyond. Before I could speak, Dad placed his hand on the chest. "It's time," he repeated. The air grew warmer. The glow from the chest pulsed, lighting Dad's face in an eerie way. His calmness now seemed strange, almost unnatural. Suddenly, the circle broke. The people stepped aside, forming a path around the chest. They watched me. Their eyes seemed to hold something, expectation. My mind screamed at me to turn and run. But my legs moved forward without my permission. When I reached the chest, Dad looked at me with something like relief. "Open it," he said softly. I placed my trembling hands on the lid. The moment I touched it, a rush of energy shot through me. My vision blurred. I heard whispers in a language I couldn't understand, voices that seemed to come from everywhere at once. And then the chest opened. A blinding light burst out, filling the warehouse. I couldn't see anything. My ears rang. I felt myself pulled forward, as though the chest was drawing me in. The last thing I heard before everything went black was Dad's voice, calm but certain. "It's your destiny, Emily." When I woke up, I wasn't in the warehouse anymore. My eyes opened slowly, adjusting to dim light. The air was warm and smelled faintly of earth and rain. My body ached, but I wasn't injured. I looked around. I was lying on something soft.
Grass.
The ground beneath me was cool and damp. Above me, the night sky stretched out, speckled with stars brighter than I had ever seen. The air felt alive. I sat up slowly. My heart was still pounding from what happened moments ago, or maybe hours ago. I had no idea how long I'd been unconscious. There was no sign of Daniel, Dad, or anyone from the warehouse. I was alone except for a strange feeling. A hum, almost imperceptible, filled the air around me. It was soft but constant like a pulse. I stood, brushing dirt from my coat, and looked around. I seemed to be in a clearing surrounded by tall trees. The clearing was circular, like a natural arena. In the center was a stone pedestal.
And on it the chest.
But this chest was different. It glowed softly now, not blindingly like before. Its carvings seemed to shift under my gaze, as though alive. My hands itched to touch it again. Before I could approach, I heard footsteps. Not soft footsteps, deliberate, slow, careful. I turned sharply. From between the trees stepped Daniel. His expression was grave. "Emily," he said quietly, "you shouldn't be here." "Where are we?" I asked, my voice trembling. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know. But it's not where we should be. You touched it. That chest, it changes everything." I glanced toward the pedestal. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "It's not just a chest. It's something much older. Something powerful. And now you've opened it. They've been waiting for this." My mind was spinning.
Who?
Waiting for what? Before he could answer, a faint glow began to rise from the chest again. The hum grew louder, like a heartbeat. It wrapped around us. Daniel stepped closer to me. "Emily, whatever you do, don't open it again." I shook my head. "But Dad," he said, "it's my destiny." "What if he's right?" Daniel's eyes darkened. "Destiny doesn't always mean the right thing." Suddenly, the hum turned into a low roar. The ground beneath us trembled. The trees surrounding the clearing seemed to lean inward. A light burst from the chest, brighter than before. I shielded my eyes, but I could still feel it pulling me. Daniel grabbed my arm. "Run," he shouted. But before we could move, a figure appeared from the light. It was tall, cloaked in shadow. I could only see a faint glow where its face should be. It stepped toward us, and the air grew heavy. Its voice was deep, almost like a vibration in my chest. "Emily, you cannot turn away. You have been chosen." Daniel's grip tightened on my arm. "Run," he whispered fiercely. But I couldn't move. My feet were glued to the ground. The light from the chest was pulling me forward, like a magnet. And then the figure spoke again. "You have one choice. Accept your fate, or be lost forever." The words cut through me like a blade. My mind raced. What did it mean? What choice did I have? Before I could answer, Daniel shouted, "Emily!" The ground split beneath us. The chest fell into a glowing abyss. A sound like thunder shook the clearing. I screamed as the light swallowed everything. When I opened my eyes again, everything was different. I wasn't in the clearing anymore. I was lying on cold stone. My body felt heavier, as if gravity itself was stronger here. The air smelled strange, metallic, sharp, and faintly sweet. My breath came in quick bursts. I tried to move, but my arms felt sluggish, as though weighed down. The light from before was gone. Around me was darkness, not the kind of darkness you find at night, but something thicker, deeper, like being underwater without the ability to breathe. I sat up slowly. My mind was spinning. Daniel was nowhere to be seen. I looked around and realized I was in a long tunnel carved out of stone. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls. They pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. I stood, feeling an odd pull in my chest, as if something was calling me forward. My steps echoed in the silence. I couldn't explain why, but I felt drawn toward the light ahead. A voice echoed softly around me. "Emily!" It was the same deep voice from before.
Calm. Certain.
Unnerving. I froze. "Who's there?" I whispered. There was no answer. Only the sound of my own footsteps as I walked forward. The tunnel ended in a large chamber. It looked ancient. The walls were covered with carvings I couldn't understand. In the center was a pool of shimmering liquid, glowing faintly. Above it floated the chest, the same chest from the warehouse, suspended in the air. The moment I stepped closer, the air grew heavier. My chest ached. I felt changed. From the shadows came Daniel. His face was pale. His eyes were wide. "Emily, you have to leave now. This isn't your choice anymore." I looked at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" Daniel stepped closer. "That chest, it chooses. And now it has chosen you." Before I could ask more, a deep rumble shook the chamber. The glowing liquid in the pool began to rise, swirling upward toward the chest. The air filled with whispers, not in words I could understand, but in feelings. Fear, longing, warning. A shape began to emerge from the pool. Not a person, not a thing I could name. It was dark, shifting, and glowing at the same time. Its presence made the air itself feel alive. Daniel grabbed my arm. "Emily, if you open it, You'll never come back. You'll be taken forever. I looked at the chest. It pulsed like a heartbeat now, the glow stronger than ever. My breath caught. Something in me wanted to open it again. Something told me that was where the truth lay. But Daniel shook his head violently.
No.
You must walk away. Before I could decide, the figure in the chamber stepped forward. Its voice was low and deep, speaking directly into my mind. Emily Carter, it is time to awaken. The air cracked with energy. The ground beneath us shook. Daniel shouted something, but his voice was drowned by a wave of sound. The chest flared with blinding light. The next moment, I felt myself lifted off my feet. The glowing liquid from the pool rose around me, wrapping me in light. My vision blurred.
My voice failed me.
The last thing I heard before being pulled into the light was Daniel's scream.
Emily.
Don't. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in the stone chamber. I was somewhere else entirely. The air was warmer now, and the light wasn't harsh. It was soft, like dawn. My body felt lighter, almost weightless, but my mind was heavy with confusion. I was lying on what felt like smooth grass, though I couldn't see grass in the usual sense. The ground shimmered faintly, like it was made of glass or liquid. Above me was a sky unlike any I had ever seen, swirling colors of violet, gold, and deep blue. It was beautiful, but also unsettling. I stood slowly, trying to understand where I was. There was no sign of Daniel, Dad, or Mom. The silence here wasn't empty. It was full of something I could name. A presence. A watching. As I stepped forward, the ground beneath me seemed to hum, almost in time with my heartbeat. The air pulsed softly around me. Every step felt deliberate, like I was being guided somewhere. After walking for what felt like minutes but could have been hours, I came to a clearing. In the center was a large, crystalline structure glowing softly. It looked like a doorway made of light. The chest from before hovered in front of the doorway. Its carvings shimmered faintly. The hum in the air grew louder. My breath caught. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. It was Daniel. His face was pale, and his eyes were filled with urgency. Emily, he said softly, this place, it's not real. Or maybe it is more real than anything you've known. You have a choice, step through, or turn away forever. I stared at the doorway. What's on the other side? I whispered. Daniel shook his head. No one can tell you. You have to decide yourself. But whatever is there, it will change you. I looked back at him. His hand reached for mine. Don't do this. Whatever happened to Dad, it's a trap. My heart raced. My mind spun. I wanted answers. I wanted truth. And something deep inside told me the answers were behind that doorway. Before I could decide, a voice echoed through the air, soft but powerful. Emily, the moment is now. The chest pulsed brighter. The doorway glowed stronger. The air around me felt electric. My body seemed to lean forward on its own. Daniel grabbed my arm tightly. I'm begging you, don't go through there. But I couldn't stop. My feet moved forward. Step by step, I approached the glowing doorway. When I was just inches away, a hand, cold and shadowy, shot out from the light. It wrapped around my wrist. I screamed. The light exploded. Everything went white. And then silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was somewhere I didn't recognize. A voice spoke from the shadows.
Calm. Deep. Certain.
Welcome, Emily. You are home. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in this strange, glowing place. I was somewhere far quieter. Somewhere colder. It was a small room. The walls were carved from stone. Faint light came from cracks along the ceiling. I could hear water dripping somewhere nearby. The air smelled of earth and something faintly sweet, like roses in winter. I sat up slowly. My hands shook. My mind was spinning. Everything I had been through, the dinner, Dad's words, the warehouse, the chest, Daniel's warnings, all of it felt like it had happened in another lifetime. A voice echoed softly in the room. You've come far, Emily. I looked up. There was no one there. But the voice came again. It's time to understand why. The air shifted. Light gathered at one side of the room, forming the shape of a figure.
Dad.
But not the dad I remembered. His face was calm, peaceful almost, but his eyes, they glowed faintly. Emily, he said softly, this isn't just about us. This has always been bigger than our family. I swallowed hard. What do you mean? Dad stepped closer. This chest, it is a choice. It is a passage, a way to see what lies beyond this world. We were chosen to guard it, to protect it, but the moment it calls, it chooses. And it chose you. I shook my head. I don't understand. Why me? Dad's voice was calm, almost sad. Because you are ready. You have lived your life carrying more than anyone knows. Your heart, your strength, your kindness. That is why it chose you. I looked down. My chest felt heavy with the truth. For years, I had thought I was a burden, that I didn't matter. But now I realized this was something different, something much greater. You mean everything that happened, I said softly, was to bring me here? Dad nodded.
Yes.
But there's more. This is your choice now. You can step through and awaken fully, or you can walk away. But if you walk away, you will never return. And this will remain a secret. My mind was racing. Every part of me wanted answers. But every part of me also feared what stepping through might mean. The voice came again.
Calm. Deep. Certain.
Emily, you have already chosen. I looked up. The chest was glowing softly now, the carvings shifting like they were alive. My hand reached out before I even thought about it. I touched the chest. Warmth spread through my fingers. The world around me began to shift. Light poured in. My vision blurred. When it cleared, I was standing somewhere beyond words. A place of light and shadow, of peace and power. I could feel everything at once: joy, sorrow, fear, love. And then I understood.
This was not the end.
It was the beginning. A voice echoed softly in my mind. Welcome home, Emily. You have awakened. Somewhere behind me, I heard Dad speak again.
Calm. Smiling.
You were never a burden, Emily. You were the key. I turned, but he was gone. I was alone. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because I knew I had found my place. And my story was only just beginning.